Welcome to Prison Professors. One of the things that we like to do is help people who are in jail or in prison understand how crucial the decisions they make are going to be to the life they're going to experience when they come home. And today I get to introduce you to my friend, Josh Boyer. He's not only my friend, he's also somebody who did 17 years in prison. And he came highly recommended to me from our former partner at Prison Professors, Sean Hopwood. So Josh, say hello to the audience.
How y'all doing?
Josh, I want you to know that when I first heard about you, it was from Sean. And Sean, you were just about to get out of prison. And he had told me there's only one person I've met during all the time that I was in prison that I would highly recommend as somebody who's skilled in helping people with the law, whether it's administrative remedies or habeas corpus petitions or anything along those lines, appeals. He said you were as good as he was. And so that's the way that he introduced me to you. And I'm just really glad that you've been a part of the Prison Professors team for several years now. How have things been working out for you?
Been working out good. Definitely get to work with a lot of interesting people and stuff that we work with at Prison Professors as clients, and just sort of getting to know people and just getting exposed to a whole different world. I mean, obviously for me, the white collar, the business end of it was just something that I had sort of stumbled on when I was in prison, but really didn't invest a whole lot of time. And I kind of was more focused on learning about the law, and now getting out here starting to get my finances and just sort of come up with a financial plan moving forward. It's crazy because most of my clients end up at the end of the day, in terms of how credit works, how finance works and stuff, they know quite a bit. So it's like I'm trying to get bits and pieces, and hopefully you'll be able to fill in some of the blanks today for me.
Well, that's what we're doing today, because you asked me some questions about business related, personal finance related things. And I suggested, why don't we do this video where you can ask me anything, and then maybe I could ask you some things and just say, why were things different for me when I got out of prison than most people when they get out of prison? And I'll say it definitely had everything to do with the decisions that I made when I was in prison. And so, I've been out of jail. We're filming this on a Saturday morning, April the 17th, 2021. I got out of prison, or I after 25 years, it was 9,135 days in prison, just a little over 25 years. I transferred out of a prison to a halfway house to serve my last year. And I concluded 9,500 days, or 26 years, on August the 12th, 2013. So for me, it's been about 7.5 years since I've been home. And I'll be 100% open and transparent with you, with hopes of helping guys in jail and prison. Tell me about you. You've been out. You did how much time that you were in, and how much time since you've been out?
Roughly 17. President Obama commuted my sentence in 2016, but I actually had to complete the RDAP program prior to being released. So I ended up getting out in 2017, going to the halfway house, between halfway house and home confinement, roughly a year, probably about the same as you. And, have been out completely now about 2.5 years. So maybe about 3.5 years total, between the halfway house and being out.
So how has the first 3.5 years worked out for you?
Well, I mean, they've worked out well, but I mean, in terms of, going to prison as a 23-year-old, I didn't, know a lot about contracts, loans, different things involved in finance. Everything was pretty much paid for by cash. I didn't have a lot of experience in terms of banking, and unlike you, I've read your book, and I saw that was one of your focuses while you were actually inside. So I mean, it probably would have done me a lot better if I would have, at least for the last couple of years, even though it was unexpected that I was going to get out. I thought I was going to have to serve until 2022. I should have focused more on that and actually become more informed.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because I'm going to give you a real analogy. We have another member of our team. His name is Mark, and he did Very little time, but he was extremely successful before he went in. He was a hedge fund manager. He had about $60 million under management of investors' funds. And the way hedge funds generally work, the compensation plan, are people earn 2% of the money that they have under management, plus they get 20% of the upside. So if they make 2% automatically, so on $60 million, 2%, 1%'s 60 million, 10%, they're making $1.2 million a year just in fees. And that $1.2 million he uses to pay for his office rent and his little staff and pays himself. But in addition, he gets an upside. If he invests that money and it goes up in value, he gets 20% of the upside whenever there's an exit. So if he does 60 million and he invests, it goes upside and they make 20 million on something over the next 3 years, he's going to get 20% of that. So that's 20 million. He'd make another $4 million. So they're paying him to succeed. That's a lot of money. That's a guy that's used to making a lot of money. He did 2.5 years, not 17 years in prison, but he came home and he couldn't get a job, Josh. And he said he sent out 180 resumes and he could not get a single callback despite his career. You got out of prison after 17 years. What have you been earning annually, if I can ask, since you got out? Year 1, year 2, year 3. And you can ask me. I'm open. I'll never, I'm totally transparent.
Yeah, well, the first year was kind of low. Obviously, it was kind of like a half a year. I was still in the halfway house. I was still paying 20% of my net income to them. So it was kind of low. But the last 2 years, I think 2019 was 60 something. I think last year was close to about, 62, 63. This year looks like it's going to be quite a bit better, but yeah.
What does it look like it's going to be this year? You're only 3 or 4 months into the year. What does it look like?
I'm hoping it's going to be 100 plus. So.
Okay. So just do the math on that. When you started the conversation, you said, I could have done something different, but you prepared yourself in ways that even though you didn't understand contracts, you didn't understand things, you went to jail at 23, you were in for nearly 17 full years, you came out and you're making $60,000 a year. So you have to know that you're way ahead of most people who get out of prison, right? You would acknowledge that, right?
In DC, that's still below the poverty level, though. So, I mean, that was a challenge. Yeah, but yeah, definitely.
But you're fortunate. Most guys get out of jail, like this guy who used to make more than $1 million a year. He only did 2.5 years, and he'll be lucky if he makes 40 grand. So you made more than 50% more than him. But but it's not only what you earn. It's also about how do you advance and make forward progress in your financial life. That's really important as well. And with regard to saying what's different in your life from the day that you got out financially and where you are right now. So it sounds like you've made roughly 60, 120, maybe 150 grand since you've got out and earning. How has your life changed? Do you have a balance sheet, an income statement? Do you know where you are?
I've just in the last couple of months really started to keep track of this and just sort of tried to map progress, what it's going to take for me moving forward in order to, to get things set up, not necessarily in the short term to be able to do what I want to do. But I mean, I'm 44 now. I don't have health insurance. I'm going to need to create a retirement for my plan for myself at some point. So there's an exit strategy. So I don't have to, I'm only going to be able to work day in, day out for so long without having, some sort of other income that I'm not going to have to work for on an hourly basis. So the way we can kind of look at the future is we can kind of look at the past and say, what are the good decisions that I've made since I've come home? And while I was inside, how have they influenced my earning capacity when I came home? How did I make business decisions since I came home that influenced where I am? And then say, well, what can I do better going forward? And that's something that has really always been important to me since the day I got out of jail. It was important to me from the day I went into prison, is I was always asking those kinds of questions. How is what I am doing today going to position me
for higher levels of success financially when I came home. And the reason it was so important to me, Josh, is I can't tell you how many people I met while I was in prison that when I used to teach in prison, I'd ask a question, how many guys are coming back? And not a single hand would go up in the classroom, right? But if you asked how many people have been in prison before and are back, 60% of them were up, right? And so you say, well, what's different? Why are you so sure you're never going to come back? And without exception, they'd all say, look, I'm going to try to do the right thing. I always try to do the right thing when I get out. But if things don't work out, if I don't get the right job, if I don't have enough money, I'm going to do what a man has to do. And it's that mindset that puts people on a pathway to failure, because it leads to them either getting back into substance abuse, or it leads them into reverting to criminal behavior, or, it then just destroys their life. And so I really have always believed that money and learning how to understand money and learning how to make money is crucial to making sure I've got stability when I come home. And I was a little older than you when I got out. I was 49 years old when I finished my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons. But, I came home and made decisions that were focused on making money and building assets. And by sowing seeds early, you grow. And that's what worked for me. So it was always important to focus on building credit. It was always important for me to focus on acquiring assets that appreciate in value. Because if I can control an asset that is worth a lot, even though I'm paying debt on it, as long as it's going up in value, I don't care, right? But if I buy an asset and I'm paying debt on it and it's going down in value, well, then I'm getting further and further behind. I'm not getting ahead at all. And I'm not interested in doing something that is going to make me struggle and make it harder. And it's never too early and never too late. But you can ask me anything. I'm going to ask you, what types of purchases did you make when you got out that either advanced your prospects for success or hindered your prospects for success?
Well, to be honest with you, it's funny that you say that, because I've been kind of waiting for that opportunity. That's one of the things that I sat down over the last couple of months and figured out. Look, I made this money. These are the only assets really that I have. I spent my money poorly is what it was, but after 17 years, I'd get out. I didn't have a car. I didn't have any furniture. I didn't have anything except for
how much money did you have when you got out of prison in liquid cash? Did you have any?
Nope. Probably $500-600, something. That's it.
So you had nothing. So and you were really valuable in prison. You were doing habeas work and appellate work and things. You didn't make any money from that?
Yeah, I made money, but nothing really in terms of, it's pretty much just supporting myself.
Right. You're getting commissaries, basically what you're getting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing really significant.
So out here, what they say, you're eating what you kill.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you got out with nothing and you had to buy a vehicle. You said, what else did you have to buy? This is an important lesson, I think, to help people understand what does it take to get acclimated outside? What did it take, do you think, for you to settle?
A vehicle, furniture, computer equipment, cell phone, clothes.
And how much was all that money? How much did it cost to get all that stuff?
I'd say roughly around $25,000, maybe $25,000.
And see, that's what's important for people in prison to learn as early as possible, right? It doesn't matter that you get out of jail. You still got to say, I got to come up with some money to get settled. And I used to do that math 20 years before I got out. Before I got out, I was saying, God, when I get out, how's this going to pencil? I'm going to need a car. I'm going to need a car. I'm going to need clothes. I'm going to need a computer. I'm going to need a cell phone. And I did the math, and that's kind of how I did it as well. I said, God, I'm going to need at least 25 grand. And that's pretty much the number that I thought. And so one of the goals that I set while I was in prison was, by the time I get out of jail, I'm going to have enough money in the bank to live a whole year that I don't need any money, a whole year. And that's after I pay for everything. And that made a lot of difference for me, because now I didn't have to go take a simple job, right? And I didn't care about a job. I cared about the job that would help me advance. And so that made a big difference. And so if you're watching this in a jail or a prison, how can you do that? I had to figure out that question. That's a critical thinking skill that you got to develop. But the sooner you start asking that question, the sooner you can say, putting a plan together. For example, if I would have spoken with Josh 20 years ago, right, when you were in your third year, by the time you'd already learned about the law and things of that sort, I would have said, Josh, you got to find a way to get ready to try and save in the bank $3,000, $4,000 a year, which is hard, which is really hard, because that's effectively $300 a month you got to save every single year. But that's $4,000 a year. If he would have done that, though, he'd have walked out with $50K in the bank, you know? And I can say, people could say, oh, that's not possible. I walked out with $100,000 in the bank before I walked out of jail. And that made all the difference for me in the world, not only because I had that cash, you know, and I had more time than you, and I embarked upon a different area that I could make money. So that was really a big difference. So I would tell you, if you're in jail, what I did is I became a writer, and then I learned to use that skill to make money. But it was always saying, I got to bank this much, and I got to bank this much, and I got to bank this much, and it's got to get saved. And then I learned how to invest. And by investing, that made a difference. But that's beside the point. The point is, you come out and you're at ground zero. You have to buy, as you said, a car, clothes, a computer, a phone. Those are just the basics. And they basically cost money. I don't know if it cost $25,000 though. I probably spent, when I got out, I know the first thing I bought was an Apple computer, an iPhone. I thought it was broken when I got it because I put it to my head and it didn't have a dial tone. I didn't know how they worked then. So I had to buy an Apple phone, a Mac, some clothes, and I bought a car. But the car that I bought, even though I had $100 in the bank, I bought a $3,000 vehicle that I paid for, and I had no debt on it. So I paid $3,000 for a car, no debt, and I probably paid in clothes probably $3,000, and so that's like $6,000. Then I probably paid for the computers probably another $3,000. That's $9,000. So I would say it only cost me about $10K. But I had housing situated because I negotiated that while I was still in prison. So that's what I spent. Why did you spend $25,000?
Well, I found myself at the halfway house. The halfway house, in relation to my release address, was an hour and 15 minutes away. So if I wanted to do house arrest, if I wanted to have a job that I work from home, the only way that the BOP would let me have that is if I worked at first only during the weekend. And then once they transitioned me to home detention 6 months later, they let me work, but I'd have to come in. They'd call me any time of the day, any time of the night. They'd have me come in to take drug tests or do this or do that. So I decided at that point that I needed a reliable vehicle. I couldn't rely on anybody else for transportation. I didn't have housing set up. So pretty much I figured that I had to have a reliable car even after I got out of the halfway house in order to be able to work and move around. So, but for me, even that 25,000 after financing became a lot more than that.
Tell me about the vehicle that you bought.
I put $5,000 down and financed $13,000, but the $13,000 that I financed was at 23.8% interest or something like that, which I didn't have any credit history at all. So no other bank would touch me aside from Santander, and that was a high risk auto loan basically, and that's
predatory loan. They were preying on you. Okay. And that's something that we need to know about, right? If you're coming out of prison, there are going to be financial sharks out there that will prey on you. Like, he put $5,000 down on a vehicle. They probably calculate what the vehicle is worth. And if he doesn't pay, well, at least they can repossess the vehicle, but they're going to make 23% interest annually on that note. And that's that's a killer. That's
Yeah.
a killer.
Mm-hmm.
So you were paying how much a month on this vehicle?
$368 plus 120 for insurance. So it was costing me, roughly $500 a month to drive this car.
$500 a month to drive a car. And after how many years, what did you owe on it?
I think I still, after paying $9,000 or $10,000, I still owed them $11,000 or $12,000 on that $13,000. So,
and that's why it's so important for people in jail and prison to understand the cost of money. Okay, you've got to understand the cost of money. That can be a tool that can either hurt you or it can help you. Leverage is great. It's phenomenal. I use leverage every day. I have millions of dollars out in loans, but the assets that I buy are going up in value. And if I'm making a payment, it's bringing the note down, but the asset's going up. So in retrospect, I wish that I could have counseled Josh at the start of his sentence, because I would have said, dude, you can find a $2,000 reliable car, $2,500. If you're paid $5,000 down, spend one for $3,000 and pay cash for it and have no debt. And every month you'll have $500 that you can set aside. It might not be cool. Like I wasn't cool driving around in a little 4-door silver old car, but it got me where I was going. And that made a big difference in my life because I could deploy that cash that I would have been paying for an asset that's going down in value. I used it to buy a house, and that house went massively up in value. Now, it's not easy to pull those kinds of deals off, but you can if you think strategically. And so that's one of the things I want to talk with you about today. Because I think that you're still really young. You're a lot younger than I was when I got out of prison. And you've got to be, how old are you now? 40 what?
44.
You're 44. So I was 49. I was cutting deals in the halfway house. So I was 48 really. So I was 48 when I bought my first house, and I'd been in the halfway house for about a week. And so you think, well, how do you do that? How do you buy a house in a halfway house? And I had have I ever told you the story, Josh, of how I bought the house?
No,
So I told you I had $100,000 in the bank, and that was really helpful because that gave me credibility. But what happened is before I got out of jail, a couple of years before, I was cultivating relationships with people outside that I thought might help me. And I'd write them a letter. And I'm telling you this because I think anybody can do this, including you right now. Okay. I started writing letters to people when I was about 44. And I would look for successful people in society. And I knew where I was going to get released. Okay. And so I'd write letters to successful people. And I said, my name's Michael Santos. I've been in jail for 22 years, 23 years. I'm going to get out, I think, in like 3 years. I don't really know when I'm going to get out. But the worst case, I think I'll get out in 3 years. And I'd really like to work with you. I'd really like to learn from you. I made bad decisions when I was a kid, but I want to get better. And would you allow me to mentor and work with you? And that, by sending out one letter, you probably don't get a response. But if you send out 100 of those letters, you get a response. And that's what I did. I started cultivating relationships with successful people. So a couple of them wrote me back, and one of the guys' name was Lee. We became very good friends. But when I got out, he wanted me to go work for his company. And he had a big company. He was a real estate guy. He had hundreds of people working for him, doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues every year. So he's super rich. And I knew he was super rich. And we're making decisions all the time about the people with whom we want to associate. It's influenced by the way that we sell ourselves. So Josh, you've got some things that you can do to sell yourself. And I want you to learn from this lesson. Don't think about today. Think about 5 years from today. And that's what I thought about. So when I was in jail, I think about, okay, 5 years from now, and it was really important to me. I want to own real estate. So I went to see him when I was in the halfway house, and he wanted me to work with him and develop my career with him. And I told him, Lee, I really want to build a journey around everything I learned from being in prison. And I said, and I want you to help me. And he said, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to get you to come work with me. And I said, no, I don't want to come work with you. I want to work for myself, but I want you to help me. He said, how do you want me to help you? And he said, and I said, I want you to sell me a house. And he laughed. He laughed at me. He said, well, do you have any money? And I said, I do. I have $100,000, but I don't want to spend it because I got to start my life out here. He laughed. So you want to buy a house, but you don't want to spend any money. I said, well, there's a lot of ways to do things. And he said, well, you have any credit? And I said, I do have credit. He said, what's your credit score? And I showed him on my phone. I logged into this thing called Credit Karma. And I said, it's 0, 0, 0. And he said, 0, 0, 0. I said, I've never seen a credit score like that. I said, well, I was in jail. They didn't have that shit when I went to prison. And he said, well, how do you want me to sell you a house when you got no credit and you don't want to spend any money? I said, Lee, you're a businessman. And I know that you make deals every day that you don't expect to get paid for 3 years or 5 years. You do it all the time. Okay. You buy a real estate, you buy a piece of property, you go down and you wait, you build it, you get permits, you do all these kinds of things, and you don't make money for 5 years. I said, look, I want you to see me not for who I am right now, a guy who just got out of jail last week. I want you to see me for what I'm going to be in 5 years. And if I could come out of prison with $100,000 in the bank, how successful will I be in 5 years? I'll work 10 times harder out here. I'm hungry. And I want you to find it. So he said, okay, I tell you what, I'll sell you a house. And I love your energy. And he said, I'm going to pay you $5,000 to go speak at every one of my businesses. And he probably sent me to 5. And he said, that's $25,000, but I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to put that towards the down payment on your house. And then he said, since I'm not going to have to do a sales commission, I'm going to give you that towards your house as well, because I can't sell it to you cheap because it'll lower the average cost of my houses and that'll lower values for other people. So I got to sell it to you for the same price, but I will give you that credit. So it looks like you'll already have equity the day you buy the house. And then when you can get credit, you just pay off the balance and you pay the interest. You start paying the interest. So my interest payment, Josh, and it was like a $400,000 house. And that interest payment was like only, as I recall, it was only like $1,400 a month. So I said, you pay the interest, that's all. But you're going to own this $400,000 asset. And over the year, a year and a half, I was paying the interest, and but the house was going up in value. So when the house went up in value, by the time I got credit, which was like a year and a half later, and I could qualify for a mortgage, the house was already worth $500,000. So I owed less. The house was worth more, which meant the bank gave me a loan that I could pay him off. And now I had my first rental property. And that house now is worth like more than $750,000. And it was only, and I only would owe on it if I still had it. I don't have it, but I would only owe on it today. When I liquidated that house, I only owed like $200,000 because I financed it on a 15-year note. So there's $500,000 in equity that was made and created from doing that kind of a deal, right? But what was the payoff? Well, I had to drive a junk car. I had to drive a junk car, and then I could leverage that as I started to get credit. Now I could borrow against that house and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. So my advice to you is right now, you need to start investing in the Josh Boyer story. And it's a great story. Just like I had a great story. You've got a great story. And that story is, I went to prison, and you had substance abuse issues when you went to prison?
Yep.
I went to prison. I made bad decisions when I was 15, whatever, got involved in crime, got involved in substance abuse. I broke the law. I broke the law. I got involved in drugs. I went to jail for 17 years without an education, right? Didn't have an education when you went to prison? But while I was in... Pardon?
Not even a GED.
Got a GED in prison and then became exceptionally skilled at jailhouse, at litigation, post-conviction. And I'm an expert in appeals, post-conviction work, writing letters to courts, helping people with, new prison amendments or prison reform. I'm an expert in that. And because of that expertise, I've come out of jail and I made whatever I made the first 6 months, I made 30,000. Second year, I made 65,000. Next year, I made 65,000. And in the first 4 months of this year, I've made 20,000 or whatever. Okay. I'm on track to do better. And so you document this story, this record, and then you say, I want you to see me what I'm going to do over the next 5 years. Because I made some bad decisions too. I made bad decisions. I bought a truck, but I've paid off the truck, right? You paid off the truck.
Yep.
And
finally got out of debt.
It was a terrible learning decision. And I had other debt and my credit got bad, right? I started out with non-traditional credit, right? I didn't borrow money from a bank for several years. Since then, I borrowed millions of dollars from banks, or traditional lenders. But I didn't do it when I first got out because I couldn't. So I had to find another way. And I had to do it in such a manner that I could persuade somebody to help me. Now, if somebody, you got to choose who you're going to make this presentation to. You can't make this presentation to somebody that would be difficult for them to do it. Like it would be impossible for me to do the type of thing that Lee did for me for somebody else, because for Lee, I mean, he's probably worth $500 million. So for him to sell me a house is like, me saying, yeah, I'll buy you a hamburger, it's nothing. Right. But he wouldn't do it for
on a chessboard.
Pardon?
That's it.
Pardon?
For him, it's like moving pieces on a chessboard. That's it.
It is. And he got his money, right? He eventually got paid because I cashed him out, and I've done a lot of deals with him. Okay. Because I could, but you have to think about that. That's something you could be doing right now. You're saying, okay, I'm only 44. I'm in DC. I want to look at DC. I want to be Florida. I want to look at the right place and say, I got to find somebody that will believe in me and that I can bring value to. So who can you bring value to? Well, I can tell you, I had a guy I was meeting with yesterday or 2 days ago. He's what's called a hard money lender. And he has $50 million under management, right? That's a lot of money, okay? $50 million. You've got to cultivate relationships with those kinds of people. And then you've got to get them to believe in you. And you can do that, Josh, if you start telling the Josh Boyer story. You don't say, I want you to give me a loan to help me. You tell the bigger story. I want to teach and inspire hundreds of thousands of people who are in prison. And in order to be credible with them, I've got to be successful. And I got to document my story. And starting today, I want to document my story. And I want you to help me. And so I would reach out and send out 100 letters every week. And I do this all the time. I'm always trying to raise capital because capital is what allows me to grow, right? Money's what allows me to grow. I work hard like you work hard just to eat and live. But I'm always trying to build bigger assets that are going to go up in value. Because if I know this, if I can own an asset that's worth even a pool of assets that's worth, say $2 million, a couple of houses, whatever, $2 million. That's worth, if it's going up in value, 15%, I just made $300,000. And I didn't do anything. All I did is if it went up in value and simultaneously the debt came down, I even made more, right? I don't get the cash, but it's an asset that's growing. And for me, it's because I'm always living on like a 5-year plan, a 5-year plan. I did that in jail. I'm doing it now because I became really successful during my first 5 years of liberty, but then I got sued by the government. And that lawsuit is just a cost of mass incarceration and collateral consequence. And it cost me $3 million that I earned but it's part of the journey. I won't ever cry about it. I just pick up and do it again, and build it again. And that's what I do. I'm always focused on working, but I'm always trying to acquire assets that are going to grow in value. And I'm always trying to learn new things. Like right now, what's going on? What's changing in the world? Cryptocurrencies changing the world. So I'm looking at that. I'm learning that. How do I make money with that asset base, that asset class? And I'll invest, in the process. And sometimes I win, sometimes I'll lose, but I'm always learning about assets that I think are going to go up in value. And that's what I want you to be doing.
That's exactly what I need to do.
So we got to start right now with a real plan. And I'm going to give you some ideas when we finish this episode about how I think you can make more money, but also how I think you can work to raise money. Now, nobody can do it but you. I can't do that for you, right? I can help you try to raise more money, make more money, okay, strategically. It's going to cost me a little bit of money as an investment to do it, but I will because I believe in you. So that's one way I'll say, hey, I'll try to do this with you, Josh. Let's try to do this together so that you can reach your goal of making, $10,000 a month. And if I could teach you how to make $10,000 a month, you should be able to document that story and leverage that into persuading an investor to believe in you. Okay. You got to document the story. You got to do the work and you got to execute the model, right? This is virtually success in anything. You visualize success, the best possible success. You create a plan and you document that plan. And then you create tools, tactics, and resources. And then you execute the plan, holding yourself accountable. So since I would never ask anybody to do anything I'm not willing to do, and I tell you, I wouldn't do this for anybody. The only reason I'm doing it with Josh is because Josh has worked really hard to develop a skill set that can allow him to make money, right? I mean, I can't do this for a guy who flips hamburgers and didn't work, but Josh has a bona fide skill. He's really good at post-conviction litigation. He's really good at helping people advocate for themselves in court, right? You're really confident in your ability to do that, correct? Mm-hmm. That's a value, okay? Definitely. So we got to find a way that we can leverage Josh's strength to help more people. In order for me to do that, I said, you got to define success. I've just defined success. I said, I got to find a way for Josh to do more work. Because if Josh can do more work, Josh can make more money. The problem is there's a business that goes around that, and that's called customer acquisition strategy, right? It costs a lot of money to find customers that Josh can do work for. But if I invest that money, I think Josh will make more. I think I'll make more. I think it's a good strategy that you get an ecosystem building and working around things. And so I'm going to talk with Josh about offline about how I think he can do it. And I can tell you really in basic broad strokes what it means. You got to develop a model, a messaging system that'll help you get more leads. Then when you get more leads, you got to have a sales process that converts those leads into sales. And you got to pay, that costs money because you got to pay for advertising. You got to pay for a messaging system. You got to pay for graphic artists. You got to pay for regular ads to, the agencies. And then you might have to have some other people on staff to help execute on the model. Those are the tools, tactics, and resources we develop. But if you execute on that, I think you get more clients and I think you make more money. So that's the plan. It's a pretty simple plan. If you're in prison, develop skills like Josh so that you can come home and make some money. That's it. That's pretty simple. And then when you've made the money, turn that into a personal story that will help you acquire assets that are growing in value. That's what worked for me. I never asked anybody to do anything I didn't do. And I'll be honest, I made millions of dollars since I came out of prison, lost millions of dollars and, made them again. It's just part of the journey. So, it's part of the journey. As Frank Sinatra used to sing, if you, what is it? New York, New York. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Let me tell you, if you go to prison and you get through that and you come back strong, you can make it anywhere. And that's what Josh is going to do. So I would submit, we're going to document this video. We're going to put it online in 2021. And I will submit that by 2026, Josh will have more than $1 million in assets under that he owns that are growing in value. It's a 5-year plan, right? 5-year plan. Holy crap. How am I going to have $1 million in assets? Well, you're not going to have it without a plan. But if you put a plan together in methodical ways, you can get there. I have a book on that, as a matter of fact. It's right here. Success After Prison. How I built assets worth more than $1 million.
You mean those scratch-off tickets from the convenience store aren't going to get me there?
No, I don't think that's the path. I don't think the lottery is the path. I don't think buying vehicles are the path. I don't think buying expensive watches are the path, unless it's part of a strategy that you've documented. You got to document the strategy. That's what I did in this book. So I want you to be thinking about that in your life. And I want us to work towards Josh building $1 million in assets within 5 years. That should be the goal. It's very clearly defined. 2026 of April. Would you consider that to be successful, Josh? If you could say in 5 years, 2026, you got $1 million in assets?
Most definitely.
Okay. Then we got to have a plan. And we're going to start that plan today. And then we got to document the plan. So we'll do that. And we'll do these periodic episodes with Josh and see if we can make it work. That's it. Any questions do you have, Josh?
Not really. I mean, I'm kind of like a sponge right now. I'm here to soak up the information. So, I mean, I know the decisions that I made. I know that I've got to start making better decisions, but have better informed decisions before moving forward and making any other sort of financial obligations in the future. So, I'm instead of trying to figure it out by myself, I'm definitely open to suggestions here.
Okay. Well, that's what we're going to do. This is one part of the plan. I'm going to write this up. I'm going to make a lesson of it. It's going to be in the course. I'm going to send this to jails and prisons with some takeaways that I'm going to ask other people to do. With Josh, we're going to take more practical advice and say, how are we going to get more leads? We're going to convert those leads into more sales, and we're going to boost Josh's income that he can use to start getting ready to acquire his first asset that is going to appreciate in value. And that's what we do here at Prison Professors. We teach people how to become successful. All right. Anything else, Josh, before I hang up?
No, I'm ready.
All right. Back with more inspiring stuff on the Prison Professors program. Thanks.